So what is e-business? E-business is a general term used to describe the process of conducting business electronically by using an internet-enabled device and the internet. The basic premise of e-business is to improve productivity and profitability by using technology as a way to access new opportunities in the way organizations communicate and relate to customers, suppliers, employees, and government. While e-business provides organizations with new opportunities, it also increases different types of risks that are rather new. For example, businesses now have to plan for security issues like hacking, identity theft, etc. So even though e-business itself opens up organizations to new opportunities, it also opens it up to these new threats that the organization must understand and must plan for carefully. Here's a quote from Bill Gates, which says, "The internet will lead to many changes in society because it has the potential to be such an efficient way to bring buyers and sellers together." The impact of this quote, more than just stating the obvious, is that we're looking at it in hindsight. We're looking at it after the fact. This was actually stated in 1997, where there may not have been a clear impact yet. So, in essence, this was a pretty visionary statement that Bill Gates produced. Well, what exactly is e-business? In short, e-business is using the internet to conduct business. However, this includes a lot more than just purchasing or selling products through the internet. It can include other activities such as communication with either customers, suppliers, etc. This communication, so long as it uses the internet as a platform, can be considered e-business. The question would be then, does a website qualify an organization as conducting e-business? Technically, yes, but in reality, no. And the reason is that e-business has to create or add value to an existing process. In today's terms, simply having a website doesn't really guarantee either. Therefore, to create value, the website must promote a specific activity. Think of a customer service website where customers would have access to previous purchases, maybe to make a payment, maybe to request a refund. This would actually promote an existing process, but that process is in an online platform and thus would qualify that as e-business. E-business also has to be collaborative. What this means is there has to exist an exchange of information or knowledge between the parties that are involved. Information that is generated via the web has to be accessible internal in the organization, and vice versa. If the information really isn't accessible, then the process itself is more static as opposed to being dynamic, and therefore probably would not qualify as e-business. So we come to a term called disruptive technologies. Well, I can say the internet at some point was a disruptive technology. So what exactly is a disruptive technology in today's sense? It has to be something that is new and unrefined, meaning innovative. But that's not the only way for organizations to guarantee being on top of things. A disruptive technology needs to essentially become some sort of sustaining technology in order for sustainability to be achieved, meaning in order for organization to actually remain profitable during a long period of time. Ask yourself, how do organizations that were once powerhouses end up filing for bankruptcy? Think of the Kodaks of the world. Kodak used to be number one in producing cameras, the Polaroids. Once the market shifted and a disruptive technology called digital cameras came into the picture, this previous technology was no longer valid or no longer relevant. Therefore, Kodak pretty much disappeared by not adapting to these new changes. Think of chapter 2 where we spoke about, or chapter 1 where we spoke about competitive advantages. Well, disruptive technologies take advantage of a new market, of an innovation, and create a competitive advantage. However, if the organization does not continue to do this and transform that disruptive technology into a sustaining technology and continue to innovate so that disruptive technology really becomes a cycle where you create a disruptive technology, you grab mass market appeal, and then it's a sustaining technology and you start over and over again. If you don't end up doing that, it's very difficult for an organization to remain on top of the game. So, in order for organizations to remain competitive and remain powerhouses, they need to pay attention to market trends, and this includes consumer behavior. They have to constantly be analyzing competitors' products and market trends. So, in order for them to really respond to the changes, they must understand what their core competencies are and see how that aligns with the market or where the current market is going. A disruptive technology is any technology that displaces an established technology in an unexpected fashion. The technologies are also new and unrefined that they sometimes have performance issues. Think of think of the iPhone. If any of you ever used the initial iPhone, it had problems in the sense of the battery life, or it constantly dropped calls and so forth. However, they were so new and so innovative that people are really willing to overlook those. They also disruptive technologies also create new markets. Think of it this way. If you were required to describe what an iPhone is to somebody who's never seen an iPhone before and all they knew was just a phone, how would you describe it? Well, because it creates a new market, sometimes there's an issue describing this. We can see this, for example, when television was invented. If you were to ask somebody, well, what exactly is this TV invention? They would probably back then say it's a radio, but with graphical elements, meaning they're using previous technology to explain the new one because since it does not have a market, since it did not exist before, there really are no words for it. The tablet, the iPad, for example, was a another example. When people first asked, well, what exactly is this iPad thing? Well, it's not really a computer and it's not really a tablet, it's an iPad. Tablet in the sense of how tablets were before. It was just a computer with a touchscreen interface, but not like the iPad that you see now. And lastly, they are different from sustaining technologies in the sense that their target market is more restrictive. Not everybody can afford these new disruptive technologies. When the plasma televisions first came out, not everybody could afford this. When the iPhones came out, not everybody could afford this. And so that really makes a big distinction between a disruptive technology and a sustaining technology. So we see this thing called the internet. But what exactly is the internet? Well, the internet began as a Cold War military communication system back in the 1960s. A guy by the name of J.C.R. Licklider of MIT, he kind of wrote a series of memos, and in those memos he was describing something called the Galactic Network that globally communicated one place to another place, being anywhere in the world. Licklider was the first head of the computer research division called DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, which is pretty much a part of the Department of Defense. The concept became an emergency military communication system known as ARPANET back in the Cold War era. It was limited to government and a few universities around the country at that moment. The internet is a global network of networks that interconnects computers using a series of standards or protocols. ARPANET evolved from military communication system to a communication tool used by universities and scientists. This happened in the 90s, between 80s 90s, and the communication system eventually moved into the business sphere. In 1994, the World Wide Web was changed by two students, Jerry Yang and David Filo, and they basically just posted a list of their favorite sites, and this was later known as yet another hierarchical office oracle, which is Yahoo. Now the internet comes with a bunch of terminology that we eventually have to know at least a little bit of. One of them is the World Wide Web, and the World Wide Web is just one of the ways to access the internet. Because if you recall what I mentioned before, the internet is a network of networks. Well, the World Wide Web is only one way to access this network of networks, which is using HTTP or Hypertext Transfer Protocol. Then you have this other terminology called URL, which is short for Universal Record Locator. And what these do is they retrieve resources on the internet using a domain name like www.microsoft.com. There are other ways to communicate with the internet, however. One of them is FTP, File Transfer Protocol. And if any of you have ever downloaded files off the internet, most likely than not, you've used FTP. SMTP you use all the time, as this is Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. So these are all different ways that you can access the internet. And the way that the internet works is you have a computer that accesses the internet, and you type in a domain name, which is a universal record locator. This obtains the information from a server and sends it back HTML code, which is then parsed by the browser and is then visually displayed by the computer or the browser. Now, the internet has had constant impact on many different business sectors. We can see differences in travel, the way that we commute, the way that we purchase airplane tickets, the way that we entertain ourselves, YouTube now, Netflix, and so forth. As a matter of fact, Netflix had that one show that was only available through Netflix, so it's now becoming an entertainment channel. And you can see the impact that this has had on the entertainment business. Electronics is pretty obvious. Same thing with financial services. If any of you are doing banking, or if you're investing in the stock market, you can see how financial services has changed because of the internet. There's even banks that now offer specific packages where you cannot go inside the bank. If you go inside the bank, the checking account, for example, will not be free. If you promise never to go to the bank and interact with anybody, then it will be free. Retail, we see how Amazon has pretty much changed retail. Automobiles and education, well, you're seeing this now, how you can take classes online as opposed to the traditional format. And so there's really a lot of impact that the internet has had on business. Okay, I would like you guys, I'm going to post these videos on the course materials section so you can take a look at them and really ask yourself, in order for this tool to be useful, how does it align with what my organization wants to do? Meaning, organizations simply can't just have a website for the purpose of just having a website. There has to be some more functionality to it that really promotes the activities of the organization, that really moves the organizational goals, that really pushes this. If you just have a website for the sake of a website because it's pretty and because it looks nice, but it's not really adding any value to the customer's experience, then really all you have is a static website that does nothing. Well, how did all this come to be? How did the internet really get into the realm that it is today? And if it was pretty much a perfect storm. Moore's Law, named after Intel's co-founder Gordon Moore, describes a trend in the development of microchips. Basically, he stated that the number of transistors that can be inexpensively placed on top of a computer chip, doubles every 18 months. This led to the computer revolution that you see today, where everybody pretty much, if they don't own a computer, can own a computer. And so it provided the opportunity of having the technology at your fingertips. Also, the development of computer networks, and specifically the improvement and accessibility of networking technology, allowed businesses to be able to create and connect to wider networks. So this created the ability of communicating with a different unit, for example, in a geographically dispersed area. The improvement of internet browsers also, such as Internet Explorer, Mozilla, etc., Google Chrome. Well, this allowed for the expansion of graphics and multimedia on websites, and this really pushed the type of content that could be developed for internet presentation. And then the popularity of email, which was also powered by the speed of email and its low cost and convenience. Well, this fueled business communications. And then lastly, website development. It's so easy for anybody to develop a website that pretty much anybody can do it, and so everybody is doing it. And that obviously pushed the importance. There's also been an impact on information. The availability of information that is readily accessible with using the internet makes it far easier than any other source to use. Search engines and other sources of information provide vast amounts of data at speeds that really you cannot compare. The quality of information that is exchanged between business partners allows for the use of such resources to not only be fast but are more accurate than traditional sources. I'll give you an example. A lot of professors, and I'm pretty sure you guys hear this all the time, they say, well, Wikipedia should never be a source that you use on an educational paper or and so forth, and that's generally true. However, what we're what we're continually seeing with this expansion is that the collaborative nature of Wikipedia allows for errors to be corrected much quicker than in traditional media. Let's say, for example, that a newspaper accidentally prints an error on a printed newspaper. Well, they have to wait for the next day to print a retraction. In sources like Wikipedia, for example, that addition can happen within seconds of the original post, and so you really start seeing that there's a bigger impact than initially thought. And so at some point, universities, businesses, and so forth will begin to catch up and catch on to these new concepts. The internet also provides a reach that is limited only to the amount of customers that are willing to use that communication vehicle. And today that's a lot, especially with mobile phones and so forth. The purchases, for example, on eBay Mobile will at some point far past traditional internet vehicles. So even that is being changed. The availability of quality information drives the consumer's use of resources. So really, because of the fact that we can access more places and we can access more content, then we end up generating better quality material because it's based on better sources, more sources. You can do something called triangulation, meaning I read something and then I go to another website and I read something similar, and I go to another website and I read something similar. Therefore, I triangulate the information based on the fact that not only one source is stating it, multiple sources are stating it. The internet itself, though, has evolved since its creation. We now have something called Web 2.0, and even Web 2.0 is a little outdated. There's actually something that's a little bit more. And Web 2.0 defined an upgrade to the internet platform that transformed the web from being static to being dynamic and content driven. It's basically set on a core of principles and practices that define how the web should be developed. Meaning, when we create websites, how should we be creating them? What type of content? What type of information sharing? It helps popularize the fact that collaboration is one of the main objectives of the use of the internet. And so the way that you would develop web platforms would be thinking of information sharing and collaboration. User-centered design. Think of this as blogs. In a blog, you are sharing information, but you're also collaborating by replying to comments posted and so forth. And the topics are based on what users want. And so you can see that even in something as simple as a blog, the Web 2.0 can apply to be defined that way. So what exactly is the future of the internet? Well, there really is no agreement, but the new platform, the Web 3.0 platform, pretty much means that the internet will be transformed more into a database instead of just a bunch of information all over the place. Meaning, it's going to be given some sort of of context. It's going to be giving some sort of structure. There's also the use of paths toward artificial intelligence, and as you saw in the previous chapter, how that has evolved. And so you're going to start seeing a big combination between the use of the web as a database, the way Watson was being used, the artificial intelligence built into Watson-like systems, and the realization of semantics of SOA and all that stuff. There's several levels that the internet has, and when you first started, we were here, static level, meaning websites that just produce some sort of content, and the person or whoever was accessing the website read the content, and that was it. So think of a phone book on the internet, or a directory on the internet. That's what the internet initially was. But then you started getting into the dynamic level. So this was some sort of interaction, basic interaction, but some sort. It was more as the website changed a little bit based on what the user was doing. Then interaction level, you started seeing, well, communication through chats and so forth. Then all these on top, all levels, is maybe the use of AI or business analytics to modify the way we communicate with customers and so forth. And this is really how the internet is layered right now, or a website can be layered. Then there's the evolution of e-business in a small business. The reason I put this on is it's a great way to really understand how technology evolved, and how technology evolved in the overall sense, meaning how is this stuff incorporated. Well, you first begin in the logical sense. You have personal computers, so everybody has a computer. And once you start seeing that more than one person has a computer, then the next logical step is to connect them. And so wait a second, well, we have a bunch of computers here. What if we connect them and share information instead of grabbing, let's say, a disk or a USB device and going one place to the other? And so maybe an Ethernet. And then the internet comes up, and you have dial-ups and the internet. And you have one person connected to the internet, but then you want multiple people connected to the internet, and so you have this stuff take off. Static websites, well, now I'm on the internet, now what? Well, let's go ahead and put a website up so people can look at our product catalog instead of us having to send a printed catalog. But then broadband comes along and changes the game completely, because now I can do a lot more than just put the catalog. I can communicate, I can hold conferences, I can do whatever really I want. So dynamic websites started really to come into fruition, and what this produced is the ability of producing horizontal and vertical alliances. If you think about this, now we can outsource our technical support center overseas, and they have access to the same information that I have in my internal office here in the States. And so the ability of doing all of these is what allows this to take place. And the creation of horizontal and vertical alliances means that organizations can focus on what they're good at. They can focus on their core competencies while outsourcing things that really are outside of their core. But they could not previously do this because of the fact that communication was not as easy as how this is generated. So information access, your book has things on intranet, extranet, portal, and kiosk. Realistically, these things are a bit outdated. Same thing as service providers. Back in maybe a few years ago, 5 to 10 years ago, this was a little bit more important. But now, really, we're here. Software as a service and cloud computing. That's really where we are at this point. And what that is it refers to a single code-based application delivered as a service to multiple users at the same time using the communication vehicle, using the internet. The main difference is that the software backend is built rather than borrowed. All of this stuff really, it allows collaboration to occur and optimization to occur, meaning think of cloud computing as electricity. You know that if you plug into an electrical outlet, you have access to electricity. And how that works beyond that, it really doesn't matter. It's just a matter of the fact that you know that you just need to be compatible with that. You connect and you're in. Today, you will often see SAS and cloud computing be described in the same term and at the same time, because really they both of them developed at the same moment. Lastly, we have e-commerce. Now we saw what e-business is, which is any type of business that's conducted online. Well, e-commerce is a subset of e-business, and e-commerce is the buying and selling of goods over the internet. And this refers exclusively and only to transactions that happen online. The main difference between e-commerce and e-business is that e-business does not have to have a transaction to be labeled e-business, meaning it can include any exchange of information between any trading partner, and that would constitute e-business. Instead, e-commerce requires a specific transaction to occur, and that could be the purchase, the sale, or the trading of pretty much any item, service, product, whatever. This will conclude the first part of this lecture. The second part of the lecture will be in this PowerPoint format, meaning you will be able to download the PowerPoint and take a look at it, and that will complete chapter 3. Have a great day.